Dave. Thank you so much for picking up. I'm sorry I missed my call. I was hauling an anchor out of a pond.
Not a bra.
And now I'm back.
I love that. Well, good to have you on the line, and
Thanks, Dave.
I really do appreciate you taking a few minutes for us here at Hawaii Public Radio. Have you ever been a guest on this station in your long career?
I don't think so, Dave. I think this is my first visit with you people.
I like that. Well, it's nice to have you. And so what's the and I have a little Boston connection we'll get to in a moment, but what's
Great.
the when we think about these shows that you've got coming up here, give a lot of people were probably curious. Your brother was just not just in town, but in Hawaii. We don't get the variety of stuff that you usually get there on the mainland. But several years ago, he came through town. So I know a lot of people probably went and saw that. So when they think of you coming to town, what is in store? Give us an idea.
Well, first off, if you certainly if you like James Taylor, you'll like Livingston Taylor. Now, if you don't like James Taylor, I doubt that. My wife just pointed out. No, you'll still like Livingston Taylor. In terms of a contrast with James, I tend to be musically, I'm very varied. I do show tunes and standards, my own songs. I think that one of the things that really surprises people who haven't seen me, Dave, is that I'm it surprises them how funny I am. Frankly, it surprises me, too, because I don't sort of think of myself as funny. But I think why that happens is that people are very relaxed in my presence on stage, and that's because I'm so relaxed with them. I love being on stage. I love being in the presence of my audience. And, I don't ever feel better about myself than when I'm with my audience.
Wow, that's an interesting, lot of interesting stuff there. And you're going to be doing these solo, or you got a band?
I'm going to be doing them solo.
We like that. That's even more intimate. And you are dialing back on to the state. Because I did a little homework. I couldn't dig up a whole bunch. Have you ever played here? What's your history with Hawaii?
Oh, my history with Hawaii. The first time I went to Hawaii was I came to your beautiful state, was to go to the island of Kauai.
Okay.
And I went there in 1973. I'm thinking, and I had one of my deepest memories is I had enjoyed body surfing back east for my entire childhood, and I remember going into your ocean for the first time and simply realizing that I was about to get my butt kicked. That I was in the presence of a real surf, and that made a big impression on me. Don't let the beauty fool you. This is one honking place. This place will kick your butt if you're not careful. And that came through loud and clear. My trips back to Hawaii have been every few years ever since. And it's interesting because I've been to obviously Oahu, Kauai, Maui. I've been to the Big Island a number of times. And when I get back to Hawaii, I have a house on Martha's Vineyard Island, so I understand living on an island. And when I feel remarkably at home when I get back to Hawaii.
I like that. That's cool. That's
and by the way, in particular, I love the Big Island because the Big Island has so many of those New England influences. Settled and visited by so many New England whalers in its earliest days. And it still has that influence and that thread of feel. It's Vermont in the tropics.
That's an interesting way of putting it. And you have played, or this is just personal visits?
They've been both to play and personal visits, mainly to play.
Okay, so you've played all over the state over your career,
I
and
have.
any of those shows on interesting bills or stuff like that, or basically just solo gigs with on your own bill?
Well, early I with a group called Jethro Tull.
Here in Hawaii.
Yeah, and but that was in the 70s, and
That's pretty cool.
and
So that was at the
yeah,
arena, I'm imagining, Blaisdell
yeah,
Arena.
if my memory serves me, it was. But again, that was a long time ago. I'm trying to think of who else I've traveled to Hawaii with. I'm trying to remember if I came there with Linda Ronstadt, or perhaps Jimmy Buffett. Don't know.
Okay, no, that's cool. You got a lot of interesting connections too. Some of these cats that he's just named are people that he's been associated with, and one of the cool things is you come from this. Your musical background stretches back to really early part of your life, and when you talk about how comfortable you are on stage and performing for people, I can't help but think that it tracks back to that. So I'm thinking of some of these as an example. When I read about you, one of your first musical efforts, you're just a little tiny kid memorizing a radio jingle for Snuff, I read. Is that true? And explain the background.
That is true. As a infant in my crib, I am told, I do not personally remember this, but I am told, I was told by my mother that she came in and I would sing. This was in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we had moved down there. I moved down there as an infant in the early 50s, and I would lightly hum da 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 ba da 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 da. And she said, "Well, what is that?" And she was listening to the radio, and there was a commercial for a snuff. And remember, North Carolina in the 50s, tobacco didn't hurt you. It was a commercial for something called Tube Rose snuff. And the lyric, which I didn't have at the time, but I've got now: "If your snuff's too strong, it's wrong. Get Tubros, mild Tubros. You'll feel much better all day long with Tubros, mild Tubros." And that supposedly is my first cover.
I love your first cover. What a great way to put it too, and an unusual one too. It's and yet there you are. It's a part of your story that's fascinating is you're not alone. You've got other siblings, and your brother's 2 years older than you. You guys interacting musically, according to what I read. You and he made your own stringed instruments, and even played in little ensembles with your siblings, Alex and Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of music around the house. My parents loved show tunes, brought in a lot of show tunes, a lot of Woody Guthrie. Our oldest brother, Alex, infused the house with Ray Charles, Elvis Presley, Ike and Tina Turner, Bobby Blue Bland. A lot of R&B came from him. Early rock and roll R&B came in from my oldest brother, Alex. And my parents, again, with that real strong show tune background. My own favorite was pop music. Loved a pop radio, top 40 radio. I've always enjoyed it, still do. Like contemporary music.
Yeah, you've had a lot of connections to radio. In fact, it was when I was in college in Boston at ERS at Emerson, and I
Oh no,
yeah.
that's great, Dave. I
So-
didn't know that.
yeah, well,
That's perfect.
I just trying to hold it out on you. I didn't want to just spoil it right up front, but I'd lived there for
Uh,
12 years. I met you bunches
oh,
of times. You were doing the coffee house show, so you're no stranger to me. It was just
oh, that's great. And Dave, I love the fact that you came to your senses and went to Hawaii. That's good.
well, that's what did
I
it,
may have
brother.
to follow you there.
It's after so many winters of that because it's not even fun. It's either like freezing rain and then the humidity is out of control all summer. So you just at some point it breaks you. You know, it either you
Yeah,
break it or it breaks you.
yeah, at some point you come to your senses and get your butt to Hawaii. Good for you.
Well, on that note of trips though, you had one of the ones. Sometimes people, and it's from different eras, folks have experiences that technology changes. So I guess what I'm alluding to is, as a kid, your family took a trip that I think by today's standards would be a remarkable one, unless it's a story that isn't true. You went to Europe as children by sea.
Yes, we took the Queen Elizabeth to Europe when we were kids. We sure did.
Is there
And
any memories of that?
yeah, first off, I was young, but I remember being on the ship. I remember being with my family. I don't have any sort of vivid memories or nothing. But oh, wait a minute. Now that you mention it, I do have one memory. Oh my gosh! Well, this isn't much of a memory, and it won't be of my trauma on that boat was that one time I needed to go to the bathroom really badly, and I just remembered this now that you said it, and I remember wetting my pants on that boat because I couldn't find a bathroom. That's not particularly. I assure you, this will realistically not happen again on stage. But no, that is a memory that I hadn't dredged up in 60 years. Wow, great.
Well, I'm glad that I don't know if I'm glad, but at least we got some original content out of you.
That's right. I'm finally getting it out.
And dialing back onto the New England thing, which is not only something we share, but is an important part of your career. So I get that you were I guess Livingston Taylor we're talking to, brother of James, coming to town. He's got dates around the state. Unfortunately, not in Honolulu. But when we look at your background, you end up back in New England. I read it was Joan Baez as manager got you a gig that helped launch your career at the YMCA in Worcester. Explain the move back to Boston and how that worked and the connections that came from that, which I understand led to opening for Joni Mitchell at BU and some other important gigs.
Well, what happened, Dave, is I was born in Boston, raised in North Carolina. My father was a doctor and eventually went on to be the dean of the medical school at the University of North Carolina. And he had gone to Harvard Medical School where he met my mother. And but they went back to North Carolina in the early 50s, me as an infant. And so I was raised in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And then I was sort of a crummy student, so I went back to Boston to finish up high school at a bit of an alternative school, and wound up just staying there, realizing that I loved making music. I wasn't very good academically, and what I really needed to do is find a way to invent a life for myself. And at the age of 16, really aggressively started playing the guitar and learning to be a good guitar player. And by 17, 18, I really was a good guitar player and used that as an underpinning from which to write songs, to and to build a career.
You end up back there. You're what was the alternative school, by the way? Is it still around?
It was called the Arlington School
Okay.
in Belmont, Massachusetts.
Wow, Belmont, Mass. Listen to you with all these names. And when you were back there at that point, was the Harvard Square street performer scene happening yet? I just can see you fitting right into that.
Yeah, it was happening. Some of my early shows were in Cambridge Common and starting to play there. Down on Charles Street, there were lots of coffee houses there, and I'd go play open mic nights. And Manny Greenhill was the manager who heard me and booked me one of my first shows at the Why Not Coffee House at the Worcester YMCA in 1968, 67, 68. And yeah, that was the start of it. And indeed at BU, opening for Joni Mitchell. That's where I remember so vividly that show because I was 18 and I was third on the bill with another fellow named Jamie Brockett. And Jamie played, and he played a pretty long set, and there were about 3,000 people there to see Joni. And when I came on, they were the audience was restless, to say the least. And so I started to play, and I played to sort of grumbles. I could hear them grumbling. And I went ahead and played my set, and by the time I got through the 20 minutes that I was allotted, that crowd, I remember they gave me a standing ovation and an encore, and I remember thinking to myself, not, oh, this is great. I mean, I was gratified, make no mistake, but what I really thought to myself was, this works. This music works. This, I can get through to an audience. And it was as though I had invented a car and I'd taken it out for a real test drive, and it worked well. So that was what was very gratifying about that, is that I had something that I knew that I could continue to do that would be supported.
That's such a cool thing you said. I mean, because you end up, he's also, Livingston is you're still part of the faculty at Berkeley, yeah?
Yeah, Berkeley College of Music in Boston.
So this heavy school there.
I've taught there for 30 years now.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's been there since '89, and this is like one of the most important. We have lots and lots of guests who have been from there, and that was the real reason. I had a good buddy I went to New England College my freshman year. My buddy went to Berkeley, and so I'd come visit him. I'd come down from Henniker in New Hampshire to visit him, and I realized that the scene was so happening there in Boston. So I started spending, and that's why I went to Emerson. So I figured out, all right, I'm going to transfer, go to Emerson. And so when I think about that way you were talking about the confidence that this one gig had, and the fact that at school you're really trying to get that confidence into kids basically who are coming there as students, flashing back to that moment of victory, my question would be, were there other times, though, when you went on stage and it was not a good response, where you were kind of disappointed? And how did you make it so that those didn't overshadow moments like the time that were so empowering?
That's a wonderful question, a question rarely asked of me, and that's a great question, Dave. And what happens is that you occasionally you play and you're just not the person to be playing. For whatever reason, you are you're not intersecting properly with an audience. And it's very important to remember that when you do unbelievably well, that there will doubtless be a couple of people who will be underwhelmed. Conversely, when you're not doing that well, there are people who, for whatever reason, are enjoying it regardless of how you feel about it. And what this is to say is that how you feel about your show is remarkably unimportant. I say to my students often, I ask them, do you tape yourself? Do you video yourself playing? And they say, yes, we do. At which point I suggest that they knock that off and not do it anymore. Because what you need to see is not a video of you performing. If you want to tape something, tape your audience while you're performing and see how they're doing in the presence of your vision, in the presence of your music. And what I teach when I teach my course on stage performance is that it is all about your audience. You need them. They don't need you. They have plenty of places they can go with their discretionary time and income, plenty of things competing for that. And it's just so important to remember when you're on stage that it isn't about you. It was never about you. It was always about them.
Do you think, on a personal note, because that's such a valuable answer to anything I've ever asked, so thinking about, like, if you're a radio professional, I think about myself humbly. Would you say the same? Because I video and audio record everything I do. Would you say I shouldn't even pay attention to that stuff? And just, I mean, how would you approach that for me if you were giving me advice?
The answer is, of course, you should tape yourself periodically, making sure your enunciation is correct, making sure that your image is getting, that your thoughts are getting across clearly. But what's crucial, particularly for radio, is to remember that if you're doing commercial radio, to always be enthusiastic about your sponsors.
Right.
And always, and by the way, and public radio, you need to, you have sponsors as well.
Right.
And you want to be enthusiastic about the people who are underwriting you so you can be in the presence of your audience. And that doesn't sound disingenuous. That tells your audience that you know where your bread is buttered.
Right.
And to have the sense that your words are coming out of your mouth and that they need to go right to your audience's ears, and that the words need to be crystal clear and delivered. And what you're saying to your listeners is, you don't have to do any work. I will bring this right to you. I need you. You can listen to any station, but I want and need you to listen to me. If you can't, I understand. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be as clear as a bell with you. And that means speak slowly, speak clearly. And above all else, what I love to tell my students is, remember, my audience doesn't need to love me. I love them enough for the both of us. This was my vision. This was my choice. This is your vision. This is your choice, Dave, to be a broadcaster. And so the idea that you would be anything other than crystal clear and in a continual state of gratitude that you get to do that is, and audiences hear that. They hear when you are honored to be there. They hear that.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice. I'm so grateful that you would take the time to, because I've been at that school, so many times, bro. I've been in that cafeteria, watched kids do their little tribute shows when I was at Emerson, and they'd work so hard to master Genesis, Rush, whatever the band was they were trying to, Santana, Almonds. Your advice is comes from somebody who is constantly having to talk to people at that school, which is just cranks out so many talented people. And another part of it is you invite these guest speakers in to, or at least I read, and forgive me if any of the stuff I have is is not correct, but folks like Steven Tyler, Jimmy Buffett, John Mayer, I read, have all come and spoken to kids that you're teaching. How do you arrange that stuff? Is that just because you know they have star power, or maybe that you have a relationship with them and you think they can bring something?
Yeah, it's very interesting to watch people present, to talk about what they do. John Mayer, Jimmy Buffett, and Steven Tyler are these are very, very bright, thoughtful men who have spent a lot of time thinking about what they do. By the way, Bonnie Raitt is also, she's wonderful and clear. Carole King. There's wonderful clarity out there. They've been doing it for a long time for a reason. They really understand who and what they are.
Those are cool guests. I've had Bonnie on the show. She's an amazing woman, and maybe you get. You ought to get Steven to come sit in with you while you're on Maui. See if he's over there. I don't know if they're on tour or whatever, but
it would be fun.
That would blow your audience's mind. And you're doing.
Yes. Or I'll get Steven Tyler and perhaps we'll get Paul McCartney to come in and sit in as well. What's interesting, people ask all the time whether James and I play together, and every now and again we do, but our people's schedules are tough to bring together. And also, the more you do it and the longer you've done it, the more preparation it takes to do it right.
Right.
And I assure you, when James or Stephen or Jimmy go on tour, like me, they've spent a lot of time thinking about and preparing for and being in the best light that they can possibly be.
It's an amazing time getting to talk to you, Livingston. I'm only bummed that you're not going to be doing our island. You've got this gig at the Mac. You're over at the Palace, Hapuna Prince Hotel, but not in Honolulu. Brother of James, very fun to talk to. It's Livingston Taylor, our guest on All Things Considered. Really do appreciate it, man.
Dave, by the way, I was on Waikiki and playing at the Blue Note there. Let me see, 4 or 5 months ago. And my wife, Gail, just said 9 months ago. But nonetheless, I had a great time. So, and I'm going to get my butt back to Honolulu, and you and I are going to hang.
We got to do that, and it'll be wicked pissa. It'll be the balls.
All right, my friend Dave, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me. Really an honor. Aloha, my friends. It's Livingston Taylor joining you. You might remember when I was a guest right here on All Things Considered. It's member-supported Hawaii Public Radio. You and I are with my friend, Dave Lawrence, and we are humbly asking your help with our pledge drive. Please become a member now and know that we appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks.
You got it.
You're the king bee. I'm hugging you, high-fiving you, and having a Sam Adams with you, I guess it would be.
Oh, that would be what it is. And Dave, I cannot wait to get back to Honolulu, and let's definitely hang when I do.
I hope that we can, brother.
I have to tell you that I do lots of radio interviews, and this is as good as they get. You're a terrific interviewer. You are a sincere and interested conversationalist, and it's really good, Dave.
That's really nice to hear. Well, you keep me in mind if your brother's ever looking for someone to talk to, because I'd love to get to him.
I certainly will. I'll throw him your way. We speak all the time, and I will definitely let him know that you're as good as it gets.
I'd love to have him as a guest. High-fiving you. Stay safe, Livingston.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Bye.
Aloha.